for staying on here on News Desk. Now, ECOWAS says it has no intention of sending troops to Nigeria to fight Boko Haram. ECOWAS Chairman President John Dramani Mahama said already the Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan had assured his colleagues in the sub-regional group that he was doing everything possible to resolve the burning issue. President Mahama said ECOWAS will support him in that respect. The ECOWAS chair and Ghanaian president said terrorism was a very dangerous issue that West African leaders were ever ready to work towards eliminating. West African leaders also raised the need for a common rapid response unit to deal with emergency situations in the communique issued at the end of the meeting. The leaders welcomed the measures adopted by the Nigerian government to end the insurgency by Boko Haram. The summit also urged the government to pursue national dialogue and reconciliation. It recommended international partners such as France and the United Kingdom for the support they had given so far towards curbing the Boko Haram matter in Nigeria. Joining me via Skype now is Alimu Diallo, his regional coordinator, the West African Network for Peace Building. Thank you very much, Alimu, for joining us here on News Desk.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we had an ECOWAS meeting on the back of recent threats here on this part of our continent. You're thinking into happenings last week.
I think the meeting of the ECOWAS heads of state to deliberate on the security threat that is affecting the West African sub-region is a very positive sign. And we commend the President of the Republic of Ghana, who is the President of, who is the chair of ECOWAS, for convening this meeting to look at how the sub-regional leaders could develop a strategy to make sure that they support the countries that need to be supported in terms of dealing with the security threat in their countries, particularly Nigeria and Mali. So I think this is a positive development. It shows that ECOWAS has always been at the forefront in fighting insecurity, which is an impediment to development in the sub-region. So if you look at the communique that they have backing the Nigerian government in the declaration of an all-out war against Boko Haram, and also calling for the territorial integrity in Mali and condemning the acts of violence and terrorism perpetrated by the rebels and the Islamist groups in northern Mali. So it shows that ECOWAS is a proactive body that is willing to support any member state that is faced with security threats in the sub-region. So this is a good thing. And I think they've called on the ECOWAS Commission to implement the ECOWAS strategy. That is the most important aspect for me, because ECOWAS has already developed a strategy to deal with terrorism in West Africa. So now they've asked the ECOWAS Commission to support member states in the implementation of ECOWAS strategy, counter-terrorism strategy, which is very important for me.
What's worth the time? I mean, one would imagine that this would have started earlier. Now you'd say perhaps it's a little too small, a little too late.
Well, it is never too late. It's better to be late than never. So we know initially the Nigerian government said they were able to fight against terrorism. You can only intervene in the internal affairs of a member state when the heads of state have decided, in a resolution to do so, or there's an open invitation by the member state. And if you remember, because of the recent escalation of violence in Nigeria, President Goodluck Jonathan, openly called for support from West Africa and from the.
Right, we've lost Alimu there, but we would re-establish contact with Alimu via Skype and then talk about this more. Now we've been discussing the ECOWAS meeting that ended here in Accra last week, where ECOWAS says it has no intention of sending troops to Nigeria to fight Boko Haram. Now, ECOWAS chair, John Dramani Mahama said the Nigerian president, Goodluck Jonathan, had assured his colleagues.
Yeah, I was saying the meeting was in response to the call of the Nigerian authorities for support from West Africa and from other international partners. So if you look at the communique, there was a clause which says ECOWAS took some special measures. That is loaded because, when you are dealing with issues of peace and security, especially related to violent extremism, you cannot disclose all your strategies openly because that could also give them another opportunity to plan and counter strategy you are putting in place. So, but that call for special measures is important because I think ECOWAS has already established the ECOWAS standby force. And now that they've called on the ECOWAS Commission to support the member states in the implementation of the ECOWAS counterterrorism strategy, and they've also taken some special measures which we are not disclosed, it shows that they are also dealing with the political aspect of the matter as well as the military aspect, which requires some strategic thinking and intelligence gathering. So they also called for the implementation the Central African republics such as Chad, Cameroon. It's important how this is also stretched up to the involvement of Algeria, because Algeria is a critical stakeholder when it comes to the Sahel belt. So how the authorities in ECOWAS are able to engage with Algeria to make sure that the international cooperation and solidarity in the fight against terrorism is enhanced and coordinated. It will be a critical factor in dealing with the issue of violent extremism in West Africa.
Now we need a rapid response team. Do you see that come to fruition anytime soon?
Well, I think the solidarity statement made by the heads of state supporting Nigeria and Mali will come to naught if it is not supported by military assistance and also logistics assistance. Because for Nigeria, they've already declared an all-out war against Boko Haram. So if you endorse that decision and then you call on the member states to support Nigeria, definitely you will have to look at how to strengthen the ECOWAS standby force and provide support to Nigeria through also intelligence gathering and coordination and the provision of equipment to make sure that the Nigerian government is empowered to deal with the issue of Boko Haram. But for me, the most important aspect of the fight against Boko Haram is also the willingness and the demonstration of that willingness by the Nigerian military to take the leadership. And it was important that the heads of state called on the president of Nigeria to take the necessary steps and mobilize the Nigerian forces to make sure that the scourge of Boko Haram is ended. Because, you have to support the military in Nigeria that is supposed to be leading the process of fighting against Boko Haram. So far we have not seen that clearly since the girls were abducted, and we've seen so many killings happening in the northern part of Nigeria without any concrete action taken by the Nigerian military. So it is critical that the Nigerian military's morale is restored and also their commitment, to fight to prevent the escalation of the activities of Boko Haram in Nigeria before they can then count on sub-regional and international support.
Now we see. Right, you go.
Yeah, the other important dimension of this meeting was also the aspect of continued dialogue and reconciliation. Because at the end of the day, even if the Nigerian government, with support from ECOWAS and the international community, engage Boko Haram in active combat, and they're even able to get the upper hand. The final solution will have to be a political solution, and ECOWAS is very much aware of that, and that is why they also called on the Nigerian authorities to also look at dialogue and reconciliation processes, so that when you engage Boko Haram, this is just to force them to come to the negotiation table. Because when two parties are fighting, dialogue and negotiation can only be possible when they have reached what is called the mutually hurting stalemate. But when party feels it is gaining the upper hand, it is difficult for dialogue to succeed. So that is why you have to look out for the right moment. And the right moment means both parties are suffering in the system and they all want a way out. So the call for an all-out war against Boko Haram is also to counter their operations, and also let them know that there is an equal force that is willing to engage them.
But so doesn't the Nigerian government come across as confused in how to deal with Boko Haram in getting the girls back? One moment we are told that we can't negotiate with terrorists, and one time we are then again told that we know where the girls are, but we can't go in by force and risk the lives of these girls, and so we can't use military action, we can't negotiate, dialogue is off the table. How is the Nigerian government supposed to get these girls back?
I absolutely agree with your analysis. It is very confusing. I think they need to explore all possibilities, because here the most important thing is saving the lives of the girls, and that is critical. And whatever efforts that are viable in terms of achieving that objective should be an option to explore. I think going out, with search and rescue operations, sometimes it is possible depending on the capacity and the capacity of the forces that are involved, and also the sophistication of their strategy in terms of the operation, to make sure that they minimize casualties and bring out the girls safely. But the dialogue options will also be another option. You can say you will not negotiate with terrorists, but if lives of innocent girls are involved, I think government should look at the different strategies to make sure that they are rescued and brought back safely to join their families. So, as you said, it sounds confusing, but we don't know why they are saying this, because sometimes negotiation to free hostages are done under high secrecy, and then you need to have experts involved in the negotiation process. Already, the good sign is that we have seen the girls and they are alive. So that is a critical factor in negotiating for the release of hostages. So now the next move will be to also establish the credibility of the existence of the groups that are claiming that they are holding them. You have to make sure that there is evidence that you are dealing with the right group. And then you see how you engage with the negotiation to make sure that they are brought back.
Alimo, shouldn't we have done all those credibility tested already? And so that now that a new video is surfaced with the girls asking to be rescued, that we have one concrete step the Nigerian government is supposed to take?
Yeah, it should have been, absolutely, because that is why everybody, is criticizing the Nigerian government for the manner in which they handled this situation. Right from the beginning, we did not see them coming forward with the right strategies, and then did not see the Nigerian government communicate effectively in terms of how they are going to deal with the situation. But now we are seeing a proactive engagement, and we've also seen a clear commitment from the international community to support Nigeria. So this should be a momentum that should be sustained, and all options should be explored to make sure that the girls are brought back safely.
But Boko Haram seems like a group that does not like to dull out of action. It's always looking for a moment to pursue an action or two. We can talk about the blasts in Cameroon. We can talk about the very recent one during the time when some 14 spectators were killed. Is Nigeria the mercy of Boko Haram? Is it so helpless? These things could happen at a point when Nigeria tells us it's on top of the business when it comes to Boko Haram?
Yeah, Nigeria actually is at the moment, dealing with a difficult situation because Boko Haram have demonstrated that they can attack at will, and the commitment of the security agencies, especially the military, to engage them in active combat have not been demonstrated, and that's the most unfortunate aspect of this. Earlier in 2013, we saw that the government took a proactive measure in declaring a state of emergency in some parts of the northern states, and then they went after them, and even though there were cries of human rights violations, we noticed that during that moment, there was a lull in the activities of Boko Haram. But now that they went into hibernation and now decided to come back in full force, it's a clear message that's sending to the Nigerian government that they are also a very strong force to reckon with. And now it's important that Nigeria has recognized that and has also called for international support. Because without international support, it is clearly self-evident, in fact, that Nigeria alone cannot deal with this cause. Because the issue of terrorism is also not confined within the territories of Nigeria. It is a global phenomenon. I'm sure they are also having some connections, linkages, and support from other like-minded groups across the world.
Now, reports are claiming that some 40 militants belonging to the Boko Haram group were killed in Cameroon. Now, when you look at that and the fact that ECOWAS is on board full force now, and you'd want to ask, what should the Nigerian people expect from this? The fact that ECOWAS has held a meeting over this, what relief should Nigerians see at the end of the tunnel?
I think Nigeria should see commitment from the member states to support the fight against terrorism, especially Boko Haram, because even the Nigerian government had argued that Cameroon was the weakest link in the fight against Boko Haram. They were not as effective and cooperative as Chad and Niger, but the recent engagement on the side of the Cameroonian border and then the killing of 40 militants is also an indication that Cameroon is now fully on board in supporting Nigeria. So I think we should see similar strategies in the West African sub-region in terms of willingness to contribute troops when the need arises, if that is the option the authorities of ECOWAS decided on. And also support in terms of intelligence gathering and sharing of information, and even the provision of logistics. So this should be, a voluntary measure from the member states to demonstrate their solidarity support, with the Nigerian authorities in the fight against Boko Haram. And it could be also a motivation for Nigeria to know that we are not alone in this fight. We have the entire sub-region of ECOWAS and the international community supporting us to make sure that we deal with the issue of violent extremism in Nigeria. So in the long run, if this also motivates the Nigerian military to say we are not alone in this, we now have support and we should take the momentum as an opportunity to engage Boko Haram effectively, I think this should be one of the outcomes that the ECOWAS meeting in Accra would have provided for Nigeria.
let's wrap up with this one. At the beginning of this, when the girls were taken away on social media, a lot of Nigerians recall the reports that said by 2020, Nigeria as a country was going to be divided. And in the face of this problem, a lot of them then called that, okay, why don't we then call for that division of the northern Nigeria and southern Nigeria? What are your thoughts into that?
My thought into that is it is not the right solution, because that would be like imagining that once you do that division, and Nigeria is going to be automatically peaceful. It is clearly a wrong approach. I will give you a concrete example. When you look at what happened in Sudan, the conflict between the north and south, has been there for quite a long time, and everybody thought if we divide the Sudan into two, then we'll achieve total peace. And as we speak, there's even tension between North and South Sudan, and we are seeing almost a civil war breaking out, in South Sudan. So to assume that when you divide the North from the South in Nigeria, it is going to translate into automatic peace is the wrong perception. Because how the North will be governed, will also be, a critical contestation, because don't forget, even this act of violent extremism has a political connotation. And then if you divide Nigeria into two, who is going to provide effective leadership and bring Boko Haram under control? That's the big question mark we should answer now. And even if we succeed to do so, what guarantee do we have that they will confine their actions in the northern part of Nigeria, especially now that we've seen Boko Haram attacking Abuja and other parts of the southern region? So that is a wrong approach. I think we need to look at it from the perspective of maintaining the territorial integrity of Nigeria and supporting the Nigerian communities, to live in peace and harmony by promoting dialogue and reconciliation, and also engaging the extremist groups in active combat to make sure that we also reduce their threats and capacity to strike at will.
But could Nigeria be becoming Africa's own version of Afghanistan?
Well, I don't think it has gotten to that extent as yet.
It didn't start all in a day.
Yeah, I know the threats are really serious. I reckon that, but I don't think it has gotten to the level of comparing Nigeria to Afghanistan, because Afghanistan has a long history of war. For almost 30 years. They've been engaged in war. They fought against Russia, and so I think Afghanistan's situation is even not only confined within the borders, but they also have a history of war against other nations and other coalition partners. So, but for Nigeria, if you look at the Biafran war, the Nigerian government, was able to fight and win the Biafran war, which was also a call for separation of Biafra from Nigeria. So there's a history, which that Nigeria was able to confront threats of division and succession effectively and bring the country back under the authority of the state. So that history is there. And this new threat that I imagine, thrive because we did not see an effective engagement from the security sector and also the issues of governance. So Nigeria, in dealing with this situation, will also have to look at the issues of governance. How do you promote inclusive governance, not just for the rich elites, but also for everybody in the country? And you look at north-south divide. How do you promote development for all the regions in Nigeria, equitable development? Nigeria is today the leading economy in Africa. That is significant. The country has a lot of potential. So strengthening the governance component, reducing corruption, and making sure that the resources of the country are equitably distributed to the people and to the different regions is also critical in dealing with this issue. Because when people are perceived to be marginalized, they can take any action to make sure that they engage in acts of sabotage. So some of the issues are governance related. So it's critical that aspect is also brought into the picture in dealing with the Boko Haram issue in Nigeria.
Let's wrap it up on what the sanctions said about Mali. Imposing sanctions on any armed groups, did it solve the problem with the Tuaregs in Mali?
I didn't get your question clearly.
I'm asking about the ECOWAS summit here in Accra. It asked the sanctions be imposed on armed groups in Mali. I'm asking if it solves the problem Mali has with the Tuaregs especially.
Well, okay, they talked about imposing targeted sanctions to any group that is undermining the Ouagadougou Peace Accord. It's just a reminder that there was a peace accord which the parties signed onto, and they have to respect the peace accord and also respect the territorial integrity of Mali as a nation. So this is a stark reminder and a warning to any faction that is undermining that. But sanctions, targeted sanctions, sometimes are effective only when they are able to affect the party involved, especially in their capacity to access finances and also weapons. But if you look at the porosity of the Sahel, the Sahara Desert, and then the problems of governance in Libya, and the free flow of weapons and ammunition, some targeted sanctions might bring very limited results. But it is just a reminder of the parties that they've signed onto an agreement and they need to respect that. And any party that...
Alimu, I'm sorry we have to go now, unfortunately. Thank you very much. Alimu Diallo is regional coordinator for the West African Network for Peace Building.